Jefferson City was a mosaic of contrasts. With its gleaming skyscrapers and dusty neighborhoods, the city seemed to be a vivid portrait of the tensions and hopes that defined it. At the center of this complex environment, the police force, responsible for maintaining order, was shrouded in a fog of mistrust. Although the city cried out for justice, cases of corruption and racial discrimination constantly shadowed the force. Among the police officers, Daniel Carter stood out not only for his ability to solve cases, but for his integrity and dedication. Daniel was a man of average height, with deep-set eyes and an expression that combined determination and empathy. His colleagues viewed him as an example of professionalism, and the community appreciated his fair and equitable approach. He had become a pillar of trust in an environment where ethics were often challenged. That day, Daniel was on duty in an area known for its high crime rate. He patrolled the streets with a watchful eye and a heart that carried the weight of expectation. The area was a maze of narrow streets and alleys, where racial tension and economic inequality were palpable. Daniel knew the faces and stories of the residents well, and his presence was a relief to many who felt the weight of injustice on a daily basis. While on patrol, Daniel received a call about a possible bribery case involving one of his colleagues. At first, he thought it was a rumor, but the evidence seemed compelling. An anonymous tipster reported that an officer was accepting bribes in exchange for protection for criminal activity. Daniel, though suspicious, knew he could not ignore what appeared to be a systemic problem. Back at the station, Daniel began to look through the records and talk to other officers for information. His colleagues seemed nervous, and the atmosphere was thick with a tension he couldn't ignore. The perception of corruption was becoming more concrete, and unease was growing in his chest. The desire for justice battled with the disconcerting reality that corruption might be closer than he thought. So the day ended with a feeling of unease. Daniel knew he was at a crucial crossroads. The possibility of exposing corruption in the police force could not only jeopardize his career, but also his personal life. The weight of responsibility was palpable, and the tension in the police station became a constant echo in his thoughts. With a mixture of determination and apprehension, Daniel prepared himself for what would come next. As the days passed, Daniel Carter delved deeper into the informal investigation into corruption in the police force. Each new lead and piece of evidence added a growing weight to his emotional burden. The financial records and call logs he was able to access began to show a disturbing pattern. Large amounts of money were being moved around in suspicious ways, and witnesses reported deals that involved protection for illicit activities. Daniel knew his investigation needed to be careful. Any false move could not only jeopardize the operation, but also his personal safety and that of his family. With each discovery, the feeling that he was treading in dangerous waters grew stronger. The details that emerged revealed a complex web of bribery and corruption that involved some of the highest-ranking members of the police force. Tensions escalated when Daniel began to feel direct resistance from his colleagues. Sarcastic comments and suspicious looks became commonplace. In one meeting, a colleague known for his more questionable inclinations made a remark that seemed like a veiled warning. Sometimes, it's better to leave things alone. The words carried a threatening subtext, but Daniel was undeterred. His commitment to the truth was stronger than his fear. The impact of the situation on Daniel's personal life began to show itself more clearly. His relationship with his wife, Lisa, became strained. Concerned about Daniel's constant threats and visible stress, she began to question whether he was putting himself at unnecessary risk. On one particularly difficult night, Lisa expressed her concerns. "Daniel, you're destroying yourself over this. What's really at stake here?" The anguish on her face made Daniel realize the emotional toll of his fight. He knew he was risking not only his career, but also the stability of his family. The arguments over security and the long hours spent investigating were putting a strain on their relationship. Daniel struggled to find a balance between the need to move forward and the need to protect his personal life. As Daniel struggled with these challenges, he also began to feel more isolated within the corporation. A growing sense of distrust and fear of retaliation were becoming a constant in his life. He found himself torn between his desire to expose corruption and his desire to keep the integrity of the corporation intact, at least in appearance. His loyalty to the corporation and his commitment to the truth were in constant conflict, and Daniel knew that he would soon have to make a crucial decision. Daniel Carter's investigation reached a critical point on a rainy Friday morning. He had accumulated a substantial amount of evidence, including recordings and documents detailing corruption within the police force. The tension was palpable, and the sense of imminent danger became increasingly real. Daniel knew he was approaching the point of no return. That morning, while he was reviewing his materials, Daniel received an anonymous call. The voice on the line was deep and threatening. "You are getting involved in something you cannot control. Be careful what you do." The message was clear and put Daniel on high alert. He couldn't tell who was behind the call, but the threatening tone was enough to heighten his apprehension. The sense of impending doom was realized when Daniel was ambushed. As he was returning home from a night of work, he realized someone was following him. A series of suspicious events culminated in a violent confrontation in a dark alley. Daniel narrowly escaped, but the attack was a clear warning that his life was at risk. The physical and emotional scars of the attack left Daniel shaken and deeply uncertain about the path he was on. The following night was marked by an intense argument with Lisa. She was desperate and fearful for Daniel's safety. Through her tears, she exclaimed, "You can't go on like this. Think about our family. What's really at stake here?" The pain on her face and the concern in her voice made Daniel reconsider his decision. He was wondering if the cost of continuing the investigation was higher than he was willing to pay. Daniel retreated to a quiet place, trying to process what had happened. He knew he had to decide whether to continue the fight against corruption or to give up to protect himself and his family. The dilemma was profound. Exposing the truth meant facing even more risk and possibly destroying his career and personal life, while giving up meant allowing corruption to continue unpunished. After a night of reflection and self-confrontation, Daniel made his decision. He knew he could not give up. His commitment to justice was stronger than his fear. He decided to pursue the investigation, aware of the risks, but determined to expose the truth and make a difference. It was a difficult choice, but Daniel felt there was no other path for him. With his decision made, Daniel Carter knew that the next stage of his journey would be crucial. The covert operation he had planned would be the ultimate test of his courage and determination. With the help of a small group of trusted colleagues and outside allies, Daniel organized a meticulous operation to capture those responsible for the corruption and gather enough evidence to expose them. The operation was marked by a series of carefully orchestrated and strategic moves. Daniel and his team worked in the shadows, gathering evidence through covert surveillance and intercepted communications. The secret meetings and illegal transactions were documented with precision, forming an incredibly detailed dossier on corruption within the police force. Daniel felt a mixture of anxiety and hope, knowing that they were about to make a big difference. On the night of the big operation, Daniel and his team were in position. They waited for the right moment to act, while the tension in the air was almost palpable. The plan was to carry out the simultaneous raid on several critical locations where corrupt leaders met to discuss and plan their illicit activities. With impeccable coordination, Daniel's team moved in and made the arrests. The confrontation was intense and tense, but the execution was successful. The revelation of the evidence was a turning point. Daniel held a press conference where he presented the accumulated evidence. The details of the illegal transactions, bribes, and corrupt practices were revealed to the public and to corporate superiors. Pressure for reform intensified, and the magnitude of the corruption exposed created a media and public frenzy. During the press conference, Daniel directly confronted some of the corrupt leaders. The confrontation was emotionally charged and tense. He knew he was putting his own life at risk by testifying against people who were powerful and influential within the police force. The moment of truth was a turning point, where Daniel's courage shone through unmistakably. The exposure of corruption sparked a movement for reform within the police force. The corrupt leadership was removed, and a new leadership team was appointed to lead the necessary changes. Daniel faced a period of turmoil and criticism, but he also received support and recognition for his bravery and determination. The battle was far from over, but the first victory had been achieved. With corruption exposed and the police force in the midst of reform, Daniel Carter experienced a whirlwind of emotions. The changes he had helped to initiate were only just beginning to take hold, and the impact of his bravery was beginning to be felt throughout the force and the community. However, Daniel's journey was far from simple. He had to face the consequences of his fight for the truth and find a path to recovery and personal growth. The fallout from the revelations was far-reaching. Some of the corrupt leaders faced charges and were brought to justice, while others were dismissed from the force. The structure of the force was reformed, with new procedures and controls implemented to ensure greater transparency and accountability. While the changes were a positive step, the atmosphere at the police station was still fraught with resentment and distrust. Many of Daniel's colleagues disagreed with the way things were handled, and he faced a period of isolation. Daniel's personal transformation was a journey of self-discovery and adaptation. The stress and strain of the past few weeks had taken a toll on his health and well-being. Daniel struggled to rebuild trust in his relationship with Lisa. He sought professional help to deal with the emotional trauma and post-traumatic stress. Lisa, who had been by his side through the most difficult times, also attended therapy sessions to help understand and cope with the challenges the family had faced. Over time, Daniel began to find a new purpose within the police force. He became involved in reform and education initiatives, helping to create programs to promote ethics and integrity among new recruits. He became an active advocate for a culture of fairness and transparency, using his experience to inspire positive change and promote a more inclusive and ethical vision within the force. The community also responded positively to the changes. The reform initiatives were met with relief and hope, and Daniel was recognized for his crucial role in the fight against corruption. At a community event, he was honored for his courage and dedication. The words of appreciation and support from the community were a powerful reminder that despite the hardships, his work had made a significant difference. Daniel found peace in knowing that his fight for truth and justice had contributed to real change. This new era of reform within the police force represented not only a personal victory, but a promise of a more just and transparent future for all. Daniel was ready to embrace this new phase of his life with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep gratitude for the lessons he had learned along the way. With reform underway and the situation stabilized, Daniel Carter found a moment to reflect on his journey. The environment within the police force was slowly changing for the better, and the community was beginning to feel the effects of the reforms that had been implemented. Daniel, despite the hardships, felt a sense of accomplishment and renewed hope. Daniel met with Lisa in a quiet cafe, away from the daily stresses of the police station. They talked about the impact of the changes and how their lives had changed. Lisa expressed her pride in what Daniel had achieved, but also spoke about the importance of continuing to take care of himself and his family. The honest dialogue and mutual support helped strengthen their relationship, and Daniel realized how his journey had not only transformed the police force, but also his personal life. As the police force began implementing new protocols and training to ensure a more ethical and inclusive approach, Daniel became actively involved in mentoring projects. He began working with young officers, sharing his experiences and teaching them about the importance of integrity and ethics in police work. His stories and guidance inspired new recruits to stand firm in their values, even in the face of challenges. Daniel's positive impact on the police force and the community has been reflected in numerous public events and meetings. He has been invited to speak at conferences on police reform and integrity, and his words have been well received by many. The recognition he has received has not only motivated him, but has also helped foster greater understanding of the need for continued reform and the importance of commitment to justice. In a moment of introspection, Daniel reflected on the challenges he had faced and the lessons he had learned. He realized that despite the adversity and the personal price he had paid, his determination and courage had contributed to significant change. The experience had transformed him, and he now saw himself as an agent of change not only within the police force, but also in the lives of those around him. Daniel Carter's story has become a symbol of hope and resilience. His journey was not just about exposing corruption and fighting injustice, but also about finding new purpose and making a difference in unexpected ways. Daniel knew the work was far from over, but he was confident that the fight for justice and integrity was a path worth following. He continued his journey with a renewed spirit, ready to take on new challenges and contribute to a more just and equitable world. The path ahead was uncertain, But Daniel was determined to continue making a difference, guided by hope and a commitment to truth.